Minister, I know the whole House will want to send our condolences to the family of our former colleague, David Warburton. I also welcome the fact that the Deputy Prime Minister has referred herself to the ethics advisor. She has admitted she underpaid tax. So why is she still in office? But there is not just a crisis at the very top of his cabinet.
Angela Rayner's £800,000 property scandal. How NHS money bought her beachfront dream. Right then, before we dive into what might be the most eyebrow-raising property story to emerge from Westminster this year, hit that subscribe button because, trust me, you're going to want to stay updated on every twist and turn of British politics. Welcome back to UK Connors, where we cut through the Westminster waffle and serve you the unvarnished truth. Now, imagine this scenario. You're the Deputy Prime Minister. You're also the Housing Secretary tasked with solving Britain's housing crisis. And suddenly you're embroiled in a property scandal that involves NHS compensation money, stamp duty savings, and a rather convenient legal loophole. Sounds like fiction? Well, buckle up, because Angela Rayner's latest controversy reads like a political thriller that would make even the most seasoned Westminster watchers do a double take. The story that's been dominating headlines involves our Deputy Prime Minister purchasing an £800,000 beachfront apartment in Hove using money that originated from an NHS compensation payout for her disabled son.
In 2020, my son had an award, and a trust was set up by the court to deal with his finances as part of that award with a legal trustee. And in 2023, when me and my husband divorced, the decision was, because that home was adapted to support my son who has lifelong disabilities as a result of that injury that occurred to him, I took, advice on that, and I relied on that legal advice that I received that said that I was liable to pay the standard stamp duty. Subsequently to that, with all of the media reports that have been coming out, I took...
But here's where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean the kind of financial maneuvering that would make a property lawyer's head spin. The money didn't go directly from the NHS to the estate agent. Oh no, that would be far too straightforward for modern British politics. Instead, Rayner orchestrated what can only be described as an intricate financial dance. She sold a 25% stake in her Ashton-under-Lyne home to a trust, the same trust that was established to support her disabled son with the NHS compensation money. The trust paid £162,500 for this quarter share, and Rayner then used these funds as a deposit for her coastal retreat. It's the kind of property transaction that makes you wonder if she missed her calling as a financial consultant. And if you're thinking this sounds complex, you'd be absolutely right. The Telegraph, citing their sources, revealed that the NHS compensation stemmed from complications during her son's birth and subsequent treatment back in 2008. These medical negligence cases are notorious for their lengthy resolution periods. We're talking years before final payments are determined, given the complexity of assessing long-term harm. The exact amount of the compensation payout remains undisclosed, but it was evidently substantial enough to fund this property venture. Now, here's where the plot thickens considerably. Rayner, in her capacity as Housing Secretary, the irony is almost palpable, has found herself defending a decision that saw her save £40,000 in stamp duty. How, you might ask? By removing her name from the property deeds and classifying her New Hove apartment as her sole residence, despite continuing to spend time at a family home in her Ashton-under-Lyne constituency. The legal gymnastics involved here are quite remarkable. According to tax professionals, the nature of the trust arrangement meant that the whole property couldn't legitimately be considered her primary residence. Yet somehow, that's exactly how it was classified for stamp duty purposes. It's the kind of tax planning that would make your average accountant either green with envy or red with indignation, depending on their moral compass. But wait, there's more. On Wednesday, Rayner released a statement claiming she had received poor legal advice that led to her paying less tax than she should have. She admitted that when she acquired the flat, she sought legal counsel and was advised she was liable to pay the standard stamp duty. However, following media scrutiny of the arrangement, she sought further advice from a leading tax counsel and discovered her original advice had been incorrect. The timing of this revelation is particularly noteworthy. Rayner made these admissions mere hours after a court order that had prevented her from disclosing details about her property arrangements was lifted. One has to wonder what conversations were happening behind closed doors and what legal advice was flowing like expensive wine at a Westminster reception. Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch has, predictably, called for Rayner's resignation, citing charges of hypocrisy. The timing couldn't be more politically charged, with ministers reportedly considering increases to property taxes in the upcoming autumn budget. There's something deliciously ironic about a housing secretary, whose job is ostensibly to make housing more affordable and accessible for ordinary Britons, being embroiled in a scandal involving property tax avoidance and multiple home ownership. Sir Keir Starmer, ever the loyal leader, has rushed to Rayner's defense with a kind of theatrical performance that would earn applause at the National Theatre. He told the Commons that Rayner had described her personal situation in great detail and had gone above and beyond to provide information, including asking a court to lift a confidentiality order relating to her own child. It's the kind of political cover that demonstrates just how valuable Rayner is to the Labour leadership and how much they are willing to invest in protecting her. Starmer's defense painted Rayner as a working-class hero who has risen through the ranks to become Deputy Prime Minister, responsible for constructing 1.5 million homes and delivering the greatest improvement to workers' rights in decades. It's a compelling narrative, designed to frame any criticism as an attack on social mobility and working-class achievement rather than legitimate concerns about financial propriety. But here's what makes this story particularly fascinating from a political perspective. This isn't just about one politician's property dealings. It's a window into the complex relationship between personal wealth, political power, and public service in modern Britain. Rayner's journey from working-class background to property-owning Deputy Prime Minister embodies both the promise and the contradictions of contemporary British society. The use of NHS compensation money, funds specifically intended to support a disabled child, to facilitate property investment raises profound questions about the appropriateness of such financial arrangements. While there's nothing illegal about these transactions, the optics are, to put it mildly, challenging. It's one thing to invest compensation money wisely for a child's future. It's quite another to use it as part of a complex property strategy that results in significant tax savings for a senior politician. The stamp duty savings alone, £40,000, represent more than many Britons earn in an entire year. For a politician whose party has built its brand on supporting working families and addressing inequality, these numbers create an uncomfortable juxtaposition. It's the kind of disconnect that opposition parties dream of and political strategists have nightmares about. What's particularly striking is the sophistication of the financial arrangements involved. This isn't a simple case of someone buying a second home. It's a carefully orchestrated series of transactions involving trusts, property shares, and tax optimization strategies. It suggests a level of financial planning and legal advice that most ordinary citizens could never access or afford. The court order that initially prevented disclosure of these arrangements adds another layer of intrigue. What exactly was being protected, and why? The fact that Rayner herself requested the lifting of this confidentiality order suggests either a genuine desire for transparency or shrewd political calculation that disclosure was inevitable and better managed proactively. The broader political context cannot be ignored. As Housing Secretary, Rayner is responsible for addressing Britain's housing crisis, a crisis that sees millions of young people unable to afford their first home while politicians accumulate multiple properties. The symbolism is stark. The person tasked with solving housing affordability owns an £800,000 beachfront apartment financed through NHS compensation money and structured to minimize tax liability. This controversy also highlights the increasingly complex financial lives of modern politicians. Gone are the days when public servants led modest lives focused solely on public service. Today's political class navigates a world of property investments, trust funds, and tax optimization strategies that would make their predecessors' heads spin. Whether this evolution represents progress or departure from public service values is a question each voter must answer for themselves. The legal advice defense, claiming poor counsel led to incorrect tax treatment, is particularly interesting. It's a strategy that simultaneously admits wrongdoing while deflecting personal responsibility. "I followed legal advice" has become the politician's equivalent of "the dog ate my homework." Technically true, but somehow unsatisfying as an explanation. The fact that this story emerged through investigative journalism rather than proactive disclosure is also significant. It raises questions about what other financial arrangements might be lurking in the shadows of Westminster, waiting for enterprising journalists to uncover them. Transparency in politics isn't just about following rules. It's about maintaining public trust in democratic institutions. Rayner's response to the controversy, seeking additional legal advice and making admissions about incorrect tax treatment, demonstrates a political sophistication that serves her well. Rather than doubling down on potentially indefensible positions, she's chosen a path of qualified admission and corrective action. It's damage limitation at its most professional. The timing of these revelations, coming as the government considers property tax increases, creates a particularly uncomfortable political environment. How can ministers credibly argue for higher property taxes while their own financial arrangements suggest a deep understanding of how to minimize such liabilities? It's the kind of contradiction that opposition parties will undoubtedly exploit in the months ahead. The trust arrangement at the heart of this controversy deserves particular scrutiny. Using a trust established for a disabled child as part of a property investment strategy raises ethical questions that transcend party politics. While legally permissible, it challenges conventional notions of how compensation money should be utilized and whether such arrangements align with the spirit of providing support for vulnerable individuals. The £650,000 mortgage on the Hove apartment adds another dimension to the story. Here's a senior politician, earning a substantial ministerial salary, taking on significant debt to fund what is essentially a lifestyle choice. It speaks to a confidence about future earning potential and financial security that most Britons couldn't contemplate. The media scrutiny that forced additional legal advice also reveals the power of journalistic investigation in maintaining democratic accountability. Without press attention, these arrangements might have continued indefinitely, with the public none the wiser about their Deputy Prime Minister's complex financial affairs. Starmer's vigorous defense of Rayner suggests the Labour leadership views her as indispensable, or at least too politically valuable to sacrifice. Her working-class credentials and plain-speaking style provide the party with authenticity that's increasingly rare in modern politics. Protecting her from this controversy is as much about preserving that political asset as it is about personal loyalty. The comparison to previous political scandals is instructive. While this doesn't reach the levels of expensive scandals or corruption cases, it represents something perhaps more insidious, the gradual normalization of financial complexity and tax optimization among the political class. It's not illegal, but it feels increasingly distant from the lives of ordinary voters. If you want to stay ahead of every twist in Westminster's ongoing drama, make sure you subscribe to UK Connors because, trust me, this story is far from over. The implications of Rayner's property arrangements will continue to reverberate through British politics, particularly as housing policy remains a central battleground for all parties. This controversy illuminates a complex intersection of personal wealth, political power, and public service in contemporary Britain, raising questions that every politically engaged citizen should be asking. The sophistication of these financial arrangements, the timing of their disclosure, and the political responses they've generated provide a masterclass in modern political crisis management. And that's exactly the kind of analysis you will continue to get right here on UK Connors.